Good morning, students. So, in the last class, we discussed regarding preparation methods of colloids. In that, the first preparation method, what we discussed is preparation of colloids by dispersion methods. That is by oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis, double decomposition method. And other than that, still two more methods are there as per mentioned in the syllabus. Electrical disintegration method. This is also called as the Bredig arc method. And one more method is peptidization. Now come to the first one, electrical disintegration or Bredig arc method. And this electrical disintegration or Bredig arc method is generally used for the preparation of metal salts like a gold salt. Nothing but a gold colloidal solution or a silver salt or a platinum salt. Like that, metal colloidal solutions are prepared by using this Bredig arc method. And let us see what the process here is. So here, now we are going to prepare the gold colloidal solution, simply called as gold salt, which is used in medicines. Now see here, I have taken a large beaker. This is the large beaker, what you have taken here. And this in this large beaker, some ice cubes are placed. These are all ice cubes. In this, one more beaker is placed with water and containing a small amount of KOH. So in water, small amount of KOH is dissolved, and that water is taken in this beaker. In this, two gold rods are introduced, which are in almost close contact with each other. And these two gold rods are connected to the high voltage source of DC. Okay, this is the equipment here. Then what to do next? Now by using this high voltage source of DC, we will pass current through these electrodes. And on applying high voltage, an electric arc is struck here. So what is the meaning of that electric arc? Nothing but providing a high temperature instantaneously. So instantaneously, high amount of means high heat energy is released here. So we will maintain a high temperature here. At that temperature, some amount of gold will get vaporized. So on applying electric arc, here we will apply an electric arc. On applying electric arc, small amount of gold get vaporized. That means gold vaporized in the form of gold atoms. And this gold which is get vaporized here, that gold atoms undergo aggregation by losing heat to the surrounding water. So the surrounding water absorbs the heat of that gold atoms. Then the gold atoms undergo aggregation and forms colloidal sized particles. These colloidal sized particles get dispersed in water. As a result, we can get a gold colloidal solution. So here, this involves two processes. One is dispersion, one more is condensation. Both processes involved. First, gold get vaporized. That means gold atoms are dispersed. And then, what the gold atoms dispersed here, those gold atoms undergo aggregation and forms of colloidal sized particles. And that colloidal sized particles are dispersed in water containing small amount of KOH. Then here, what is the role of KOH? See, the role of KOH in this process is, it keeps the gold colloidal solution stable. That means these OH minus ions may get adsorbed on the surface of gold colloidal particles. As a result, the gold colloidal particles will repel each other and we can prevent the coagulation. So presence of this small amount of KOH can keep the gold colloidal solution stable. And why we should keep ice cubes here? What is the role of these ice cubes? So here gold atoms get vaporized and the heat is absorbed by the water, and that heat from the water is absorbed by these ice cubes and the solution is kept cool. That means whatever the gold get vaporized here, that vaporized gold atoms undergo condensation readily. by losing heat to the surrounding water as well as to ice cubes. Then we can get colloidal sized particles. So this is the preparation of gold colloidal solution, which is used in the preparation of some medicines. See once again, in a large beaker, ice cubes are placed. In this, another beaker is placed, and in this beaker, we will take the water which containing small amount of KOH. Two gold rods are introduced, and these two gold rods are connected to high voltage source of DC, and then an electric arc is struck between the two electrodes. As a result, some amount of gold get vaporized, and these gold atoms get vaporized, loses heat to the surrounding water and under aggregation. As a result, we can get colloidal sized particles, and that colloidal sized particle dispersed in this water. The presence of KOH keep the colloidal solution stable, and this method is nothing but called as Briggs electric arc method. So in this process, dispersion as well as condensation, both processes are involved. This is the second method of preparation of colloidal solution. Now come to the third one, peptidization. See, peptidization is nothing but the process of conversion of freshly prepared precipitate into a colloidal solution. During a reaction, what the precipitate formed, and that freshly prepared precipitate is converted to colloidal solution by adding a suitable electrolyte, and that process is nothing but called as peptidization. For example, ferric hydroxide. A freshly prepared precipitate of ferric hydroxide is there. So this ferric hydroxide precipitate can get to the salt solution of ferric salts. If add sodium hydroxide, then ferric hydroxide get precipitated, and this precipitate we can convert into colloid. The freshly prepared precipitate can be converted into colloidal solution by adding a suitable electrolyte, and what the electrolyte will add here is FeCl3. Means to a freshly prepared precipitate of ferric hydroxide, if we add a ferric chloride solution, then this precipitate is converted to colloidal solution. Similarly, a freshly prepared precipitate of AgCl can be converted to colloidal solution by adding a AgNO3. So by adding an electrolyte, we can convert a freshly prepared precipitate into colloidal solution. This process is called as peptidization. Precipitate to colloidal solution by adding suitable electrolyte, called as peptidization. Then here, how a precipitate is converted to colloidal solution by adding a suitable electrolyte. Let us see the process here. So this is FeOH taken thrice precipitate particles. This is one more particle. So these are the ferric hydroxide particles in the precipitate. Now, if we add some small amount of ferric chloride, what the ferric ions produced here, these ferric ions get adsorbed on the surface of precipitate particles. So here ferric ions get adsorbed here. Since ferric ions whenever get adsorbed here, this particle gets some charge. That means now this particle becomes positively charged particle. Now this also becomes positively charged particle. Two positively charged particles repel each other. So now what the precipitate is there, and this precipitate will get dispersed. Means the particles get separated and dispersed as colloidal sized particles in solution. That is called as peptidization. Similarly, if we take AgCl precipitate, to the AgCl precipitate, if we add AgNO3, the Ag plus ions get adsorbed here. Means the ions which are present common to the precipitate get adsorbed here. As a result, we can get a colloidal sized particle with a positive charge. Since the positively charged particles repel each other, These particles get dispersed in solution as total sized particle, and that is what is called as peptidization. So simply, peptidization is nothing but the process of conversion of a freshly prepared precipitate into a colloidal solution by adding a suitable electrolyte. And here, what the electrolyte we are adding, this electrolyte is called as peptizing agent. In the conversion of ferric hydroxide to colloid, the peptizing agent is ferric chloride. Similarly, in the conversion of AgCl precipitate to colloidal solution, the peptizing agent is AgNO3. So the electrolyte which is added to convert the freshly prepared precipitate into colloidal solution is called as peptizing agent. And what is the role of this peptizing agent is, the ions of the peptizing agent get adsorbed on the surface of the precipitate. As a result, you can get charged particles. These charged particles repel each other. Since the same charged particles repel each other, the precipitate is dispersed in solution as colloidal sized particles. That is nothing but peptidization. So these are the preparation methods for the preparation of colloidal solutions. In the beginning, we discussed the dispersion methods. This is also a dispersion method, electrical disintegration method, and this is a peptidization. So these are preparation methods of colloids. Now, after preparation, what the colloidal solution obtained here? This colloidal solution contains some impurities. Those impurities we should remove. That process is nothing but called as purification. See what the impurities present in a colloidal solution. The impurities present in the colloidal solutions are nothing but electrolyte particles. See, presence of a small amount of electrolyte can keep the colloidal solution stable, whereas presence of the same electrolyte in large quantities makes the colloidal solution unstable. So for the stability of colloids, we require some electrolyte particles. As we discussed earlier, what the AgCl precipitate formed here, over the surface of AgCl, Ag plus ions get adsorbed here. And these Ag plus ions which are adsorbed here are responsible for the stability of colloid. Suppose if all these particles again removed, if Ag plus ions get removed completely, again AgCl particles undergo coagulation and get precipitated. So presence of electrolyte particles is essential for the stability of colloid. At the same time, the electrolyte particles should not be more. If more number of electrolyte particles are there, again they can keep the colloidal solution unstable. So electrolyte particles should be present to the required level, but not in large amounts. So what the excess of electrolyte particles are there, those excess of electrolyte particle we should remove from the colloidal solution. And that process of removal of excess of electrolyte particles from colloidal solution is nothing but called as purification. So purification is nothing but the process of removal of excess of electrolyte particles from a colloidal solution. That is called as purification of colloids. And this purification of colloids done by three different methods. One is dialysis. Second one is electrodialysis. Third one is ultrafiltration. So these are the three methods which are commonly used for the purification of colloids: dialysis, electrodialysis, and ultrafiltration. These are the three methods used generally for the purification of colloids. Now come to this dialysis process. In this process, so we'll take a large beaker. In this large beaker, the water is kept in continuous circulation. So water is kept in circulation continuously. So this is water which is under circulation. Now the colloidal solution which is to be purified is taken in a parchment membrane or parchment bag, what is called as. The colloidal solution which is to be purified is placed in a parchment bag. So what is this parchment bag? Is nothing but commonly used substances are pig bladder. So here parchment bag is nothing but pig bladder. So the role of this pig bladder is a pig bladder allows only electrolyte particles through it, not the colloidal particles. And some other parchment membrane has cellophane. So parchment membrane or cellophane or pig bladder. Cellophane also we can use. These are synthetic materials. So pig bladder is naturally available. So pig bladder, parchment membrane or cellophane, these are commonly used substances for purification of colloids by dialysis. So the role of this parchment bag or pig bladder is nothing but it allows only true solution particles, nothing but electrolyte particles to pass out through it. Suppose, let us assume these are the electrolyte particles. It is mentioned here in the colloid. These are colloidal particles. Now, when this parchment bag containing this colloidal solution is placed in water, then this parchment membrane is having a pores, and through the pores of this membrane, only the electrolyte particle will come outside. Whereas this colloidal particle, you come nearer to this parchment membrane, it will not come outside. Only it allows the small sized particles having the size less than 1 nanometer. So these are having minute pores, micropores are there. Through that micropores, only electrolyte particle will come outside, not the colloidal particles. And these electrolyte particles which are coming out from this parchment membrane will be removed along with the circulated water. As a result, the concentration of these electrolyte particles in the colloidal solution will be decreased to a required level. That means we can keep the colloidal solution stable. So this process of removal of electrolyte particles from a colloidal solution by using a suitable membrane is nothing but called as dialysis. So dialysis is the process of removal of electrolyte particles by using a suitable membrane. This is called dialysis method. And for dialysis, what the commonly used substances are: parchment bag, this is a pig bladder, cellophane sheet. These are commonly used. The role of these is through this micropores of these substances, only electrolyte particle will come outside, either positively charged or negatively charged. As a result, the number of electrolyte particles in the colloidal solution will be decreased. The stability of colloidal solution will be increased. So this is called as dialysis. Next, second one is electrodialysis. Same process as it is, we will carry out this dialysis process by using some electric field. Means here I will keep some electrodes. This is an electrode. Let us assume this is a positive electrode, and one more electrode is placed here. This is a negative electrode. Then what happens? What the electrolyte particles here? Let us assume this is a negatively charged particle and this is a positively charged particle. So this negatively charged particle are attracted by the positive pole. So these ions migrate towards anode, whereas this positively charged particles are migrated towards cathode. As a result, the dialysis process made faster. Under the influence of electric field, the electrolyte particles will come out from this membrane more quickly than compared to earlier in dialysis process. So like this, the process of removal of electrolyte particles by using electric field that is by using electrodes, is nothing but called as electrodialysis. Here dialysis process takes place slowly. Here dialysis process takes place more quickly. In both the principle is same. Here without electric field, here with electric field, the process is carried out. So this is the second method for the purification of colloids. Now, come to the third one, ultrafiltration. See, if you take ordinary filter papers, in ordinary filter papers, the pore size will be more. So the colloidal particle can pass out to the ordinary filter papers. Suppose if you have reduced the size of the pores in filter paper, then we can separate the colloidal particles from the colloidal solution. For that we are using ultra filter papers. Then what is the difference between filter paper and ultra filter paper? Only the pore size. In ultra filter paper, the size of the pore is less, whereas in normal filter papers, the size of the pore is more. So now we can convert filter papers to ultra filter papers by using collodion solution. So filter paper we can convert into ultra filter paper by using a collodion solution. What is collodion solution? So collodion solution is nothing but 4% nitrocellulose in a mixture of alcohol and ether. 4% nitrocellulose solution in a mixture of alcohol and ether is nothing but called as collodion solution. First, the ordinary filter papers are soaked in collodion solution, and then these filter papers made hardened by using formaldehyde, and then they are dried. As a result, we can get ultra filter papers. So these filter papers are soaked in collodion solution, and then they are hardened by using formaldehyde and then dried. During this process, the pore size of filter papers will be reduced. As a result, we can get ultra filter papers. Now, so by taking ultra filter papers, suppose in a conical flask, if you place an ultra filter paper here, and in this ultra filter paper, if you add a colloidal solution, by adding colloidal solution through the micropores of this ultra filter paper, only electrolyte particle will come outside. Electrolyte particle will come outside and colloidal particles remains on the filter paper. But this ultra filtration process takes place very slowly. So to increase the velocity of this ultra filtration process, either pressure is applied on the solution or suction is applied. So on applying either suction or on increasing the pressure on solution, this filtration process made fast. So this is called as ultra filtration. Overall, in all these three methods, what the process takes place is we are reducing the electrolyte particles in a colloidal solution. Nothing but the process of removal of electrolyte particles from a colloidal solution by using a suitable membrane is called dialysis. If the same process is carried out under the influence of an electric field, that is by placing two electrodes, then dialysis process is made faster, which is called as electrodialysis. And then ultrafiltration. In ordinary filter paper, the size of the pore is more. We can reduce the size of the pore, then it becomes ultrafilter papers. For that, we are using collodion solution. This collodion solution is nothing but 4% nitrocellulose solution in the mixture of alcohol and ether. First, ordinary filter papers are soaked in collodion solution and then hardened by using formaldehyde. As a result, the size of the pores of filter paper will be reduced, then we can get ultra filter papers. And by using that ultra filter papers, we can separate electrolyte particles from a colloidal solution. But this ultra filtration process takes place slowly. to increase the velocity of this ultrafiltration process, either pressure should be applied or suction should be applied on the colloidal solution. Then rate of filtration will increase. So these are the three methods which are commonly used for the purification of colloids: dialysis, electrodialysis, and ultrafiltration. Right. This is regarding purification of colloidal solutions. Now, the next one is properties of colloids. Right. The first one is colligative properties. And here, as per syllabus, we are going to discuss about colligative properties, Tyndall effect, color, Brownian moment, charge present on the colloidal particles, peptidization, protection of colloids, electrophorosis. Regarding these 8 properties, we are going to discuss as per the syllabus mentioned. Now, come to the first one, colligative properties. What are these colligative properties? See, the colligative properties topic you will learn very clearly in solution chapter. Just a brief I'll tell here. Elevation of boiling point means increase in boiling point. Depression of freezing point, that is a decrease in freezing point. Relative lowering of vapor pressure, osmotic pressure. These are the major 4 colligative properties. So then first say, what is colligative property? See, the properties of a solution which depends on number of solute particles, but not on nature of solute particle. The properties of solution which depends on number of solute particles, but not on nature of solute particles. That is called as a colligative property. A simple example. So I have taken a 1 molar solution glucose and one more 1 molar solution urea. So if you take 1 molar solution of glucose, this contains Avogadro number of glucose molecules. Similarly, 1 molar urea solution also contains Avogadro number of urea molecules. Now, if you measure the boiling point of this solution and boiling point of this solution, both will be exactly same, you can get. But the electrolytes are different here. Here glucose molecules are there, here urea molecules are there. But both solution contains the same number of urea and glucose molecules. If you measure the boiling point, in both cases we will get nearly same. So here nature of solute is different, but the number of solute particles are same. Then colligative property also same. So like that, the properties of solution which depends on number of solute particles, but not on nature of solute particles, that is called as a colligative property. Now, I am going to compare a glucose solution and a starch solution. Let us see now. Same volume of a glucose solution and a colloidal solution I have taken of same concentration. Now, this is the size of a glucose molecule. Like this, number of particles are present. Yes. This is glucose solution. This is a starch solution. This is the size of the particle. This is the colloidal sized particle. Now, if we compare this and this, in which case the number of particles will be more, either starch or glucose? Since the size of the particle is more, number of particles per a given volume will be less. So number of starch particles will be less than compared to number of glucose molecules. Since the number of molecules is less, the colligative property of starch will be less than glucose. Means the colligative properties of colloidal solutions are always having lesser values than true solutions. So colligative means the colloidal solutions are having low colligative properties. For example, I have taken glucose, urea solution, NaCl solution, and one more blood. Suppose out of these four solutions, which is having a less colligative property, as now we discussed, colloidal solutions are having low colligative properties than compared to true solution. Now compare these solutions. Among these, which are true solutions, which are colloidal solution? Glucose is a true solution. Urea solution is also a true solution. NaCl solution is also a true solution because the size of solid particles is less than 1 nanometer here. Whereas blood is a colloidal solution. Since blood is colloidal solution, number of particles per a given unit volume will be less than compared to these three. So colligative property is less for blood. So like that, colloidal solutions are having low colligative properties. Since colligative properties depends on number of solute particles but not on nature of solute. So what those colligative properties are? Elevation in boiling point, depression in freezing point, a relative lowering of vapor pressure, and osmotic pressure. So regarding these properties, you will learn very clearly in solution chapter. So this is regarding the first property. Overall, colloidal solution contains less number of particles per unit volume. So the colligative properties of colloidal solutions are having low values. This is the first property. Now on to the second one, Tyndall effect. So this is an important colligative property they ask in examination. Let's see what is this Tyndall effect. So this Tyndall effect is nothing but scattering of light when made to pass through a colloidal solution. Let us see a simple experiment here. Take some colloidal solution in a beaker, either starch colloidal solution or milk or any other gold colloidal solution, any one colloidal solution. Now into this colloidal solution, just pass some light, light waves. This is the source of light. From this the light rays will come and pass these light rays which are coming out from this lens through this colloidal solution. This is so when a beam of light is allowed to pass through a colloidal solution, whatever the beam of light is there here, this beam of light get illuminated. This phenomenon is nothing but known as Tyndall effect. Why the beam of light get illuminated here? That is due to scattering of light. Now if you see this path of light perpendicularly perpendicular to the solution by using a microscope. By using a microscope, if you see the solution perpendicularly, then we can find the Caudal particles as bright stars. As bright stars, we can observe these caudal particles. And this total path of this light will get illuminated, and this remains as dark. Why this path get illuminated? This path will get illuminated because of the scattering of light by the caudal particles present in the path. As a result, this path appears as bright beam, and this is called as a Tyndall cone. The path of the projected light appears as bright beam, and that bright beam of light is nothing but called as Tyndall cone. If you see the light, if you see this caudal solution perpendicular to the light, that is perpendicular to the solution, then we can observe caudal particles as bright particles. This phenomenon is nothing but called as Tyndall cone. And for this, some examples in the first class we discussed. The path of the projector light we are able to see. That means the dust particles present in the path of the projector light we are able to see. And there the basic principle involved is Tyndall effect. Means whenever the projector light is made to fall on the dust particles, the light gets scattered on the surface of dust particle. As a result, the path of the light appears as bright. That means we can see the dust particles as bright spots. When sunlight enters into the room in the early morning hours or in the evening hours, then we can see the path of the light very clearly, and we are able to see the dust particles also very clearly. Because when the light is made to fall on the dust particles, the light particles get, that means the light gets scattered. As a result, we can see the dust particle as bright spot. Actually, we are not able to see the dust particle exactly. Suppose this is the dust particle, a particle, caudal particle. When light is made to fall on the surface of this particle, the light will get scattered. That means we are seeing the light aroma around this particle. The brightness layer around this dust particle we are able to see, which is called as aroma. The aroma of the light we are able to see, not exactly the size of the particle. Here what is visible to our eyes, there is not exactly the size of the particle. The aroma of light which is present around the particle we are able to see. So because of the scattering of light, this particle appears as bright. Okay, so this is what is called as Tyndall effect. But this Tyndall effect is not shown by true solution, but will be shown by colloidal solution as well as suspension. What is the conditions required? Two conditions should be satisfied for a solution to exhibit a Tyndall effect. So to exhibit a Tyndall effect, the first condition is size of, there is a diameter of particle should not be smaller than wavelength of light. So what the light we are passing here, its wavelength and diameter, if we compare, the diameter of the particle should not be less than the wavelength of the light. For example, suppose this is a particle. Now this is the diameter of this particle. The light what we are passing is having wavelength like this. This is the wavelength of the light. Now Tyndall effect is not observed, because here the diameter of the particle is less than the wavelength of the light. In this case, Tyndall effect is not observed. Suppose if the wavelength of the light is like this. This is the wavelength of the light and this is the size of the particle. This is the diameter of the particle. Now in this case we can observe Tyndall effect. So the first condition required is diameter of the particle should not be smaller than the wavelength of the light. So particle size should be more than the wavelength of the light, then only the light gets scattered. Otherwise, if wavelength is more than compared to diameter, no scattering takes place, the light will pass away without any scattering. So this is the first condition what is required. The diameter of the particle should not be smaller than the wavelength of the light what we have passed. This is the first condition. And the second condition is the difference between refractive index The difference between the refractive index of dispersed phase and dispersion medium should be high. This is the second condition that is required here. The difference between the refractive index of dispersed phase and dispersion medium should be more. Then the Tyndall effect will be observed more efficiently. So see once again, Tyndall effect is nothing but the process of scattering of light by the choroidal particles present in a choroidal solution is called as Tyndall effect. When a beam of light is made to pass through the choroidal solution, the beam of the light get illuminated, and this illuminated light beam is nothing but called as a Tyndall cone. The illumination of light beam is due to the scattering of the light by the choroidal particles. See, light is having different wavelengths. Which wavelength light get dispersed or scattered? The wavelength of the light dispersed or scattered depending on the size of the choroidal particle. Depending on the size of the choroidal particle, the wavelength of the light get scattered depends. And what are the conditions required here for exhibit Tyndall effect? To exhibit Tyndall effect, the solution must satisfy these two conditions. The first condition is the diameter of the particle should not be smaller than the wavelength of the light. The second condition is the difference between the refractive index of dispersed phase and dispersion medium should be more. If these two conditions are satisfied, then we can observe Tyndall effect. See, if we say true solution, in true solution, the diameter of the particle will be very less than compared to wavelength of the light what we are passing. So scattering of light cannot take place. Tyndall effect is not observed. In case of choroidal solution as well as suspension, the diameter of the particle is more, so we can observe a Tyndall effect. So this is the second property of colloidal solution. Come to the third one, color. Color of colloidal solutions. See, the color of a colloidal solution depends on two factors. One is size of the particle. The second one is nature of receiving light. The color of colloidal solution mainly depends on two factors. The first factor is the size of the particle, and second one is the nature of receiving light. Based on these two factors, the color of a colloidal solution depends. Because same colloidal solution can exhibit different colors. For example, I will take a gold colloidal solution. Not gold, let us take milk. If you take milk, through the milk, if you pass a beam of light, through the milk, the path of the light get illuminated. This is the illuminated light beam. Then this illuminated light beam appears in two different colors. Suppose if you are receiving the transmitted light, what the light get transmitted? If the transmitted light, if you receive, then it appears as red color. Suppose if the reflected color, if you receive, it appears as blue color. If the transmitted light, if you receive, then it appears in red color. If the reflected light, if you receive, that is in a blue color. That means same colloidal solution, depending on the nature of receiving the solution, we can get two different colors. That is the second factor, nature of receiving light. So milk appears as red if you receive transmitted light. Same milk solution appears as blue if you receive reflected light. Now, how size of the particle can affect color of the colloid? Now take here a gold colloidal solution. So if the size of this gold particles is less, if smaller gold particles are present in colloidal solution, then the solution appears in a red color. As the size of particle increases, that means as the size of this gold particle increases, then color changes to purple. Still if increased, then color changes to blue. Still increased, it appears as golden yellow. That means the same colloidal solution, depending on size of the particle, it shows different colors. If the size of the gold particle is less, it appears in red color. If size is increased, then it becomes purple. Still increased, blue color. Still increased, finally it gives a golden yellow color. Like that. The color of the colloidal solution depends on two factors. One is size of the particle, another is nature of receiving light. Here, for the same colloidal solution, as the size of the particle increases, the color changes from red to purple, purple to blue, blue to golden, yellow. Next, the nature of receiving light. See, here milk colloidal solution I have taken. If the transmitted light, if you have received, then it appears in red color. If the reflected light is received, then it appears in blue color. So this is regarding color of colloidal solutions. And next property, Brownian moment. So what is this Brownian moment? Or what is the cause of Brownian moment? So if you take a colloidal solution, in a colloidal solution, what the colloidal particles are there? These colloidal particles moves randomly. The colloidal particles moves randomly in different directions with different velocities. That is what is called as a zigzag momentum. The zigzag momentum or the random momentum of colloidal particles in a colloidal solution is called as Brownian moment. So this was first observed by the scientist Robert Brown. So Robert Brown has studied the movement of pollen in water or in a solution. So he named that movement of pollen as a Brownian moment. The same term is used further. So this zigzag random momentum of colloidal particles in a colloidal solution is called Brownian moment. Yeah. What is the cause of Brownian moment? And what is the use of this Brownian moment? So why these particles move randomly with different velocities in different directions? See, when these colloidal particles are moving, these colloidal particles move the dispersion medium molecules. So while it is moving in the direction, whatever the dispersion medium molecule is there, with the dispersion medium molecule, it can collide. Whenever it collides with the dispersion medium molecule, then it changes its kinetic energy as well as the direction of momentum also. Now here direction changes like this. Again after moving some distance, again it can collide with a dispersion medium molecule. Now again its kinetic energy changes as well as its direction also changes like this. So due to that, this is called as a unbalanced bombardment. Due to the unbalanced bombardment of colloidal particles with the dispersion medium molecules, the colloidal particles moves randomly with different velocities in different directions. And this random momentum of colloidal particles is nothing but called as Brownian moment. So the main cause of Brownian moment is unbalanced bombardment of dispersed colloidal particles with dispersion medium molecules. This is what is called as Brownian moment. Next, charge present on the colloids. See, colloidal particles are charged. So the colloidal particles may be either positively charged or negatively charged. So the charge present on the colloidal particles can be explained based on different factors. And those are, the first method is electron capture. Electron capture by salt particles, means colloidal solution particles, during electrical disintegration. Electron capture by salt particles during electrical disintegration. Just now earlier what we discussed, the Brady-Garg method. That is an electrical disintegration method. So during electrical disintegration method, the colloidal particles can capture electrons. As a result, we can get negatively charged. So electron capture by salt particles during electrical disintegration. This is one method. Second one is preferential adsorption of ions. Preferential adsorption of ions on colloidal particles. Means whatever the ions present in the colloidal solution, there is electrolyte particles. Those electrolyte particles get adsorbed on the surface of colloidal particles. As a result, we can get charge. This is the second way of explaining the charge present on the colloids. And third one is ionization of surface groups. Ionization of surface groups. So based on these three methods, the charge present on the colloidal particles is explained. The first one is electron capture by salt particles during electrical disintegration method. The second one is preferential adsorption of ions from solutions. And the third one is ionization of surface groups. Out of these three methods, the most accepted one is preferential adsorption of ions from solution. That is, due to the adsorption of ions present in the solution on colloidal particles, the colloidal particle acquires some charge. And how that colloidal particle acquires charge? By the preferential adsorption. In the next class we will discuss. Let's see today what we discussed till now. The preparation methods of colloids. The first one is chemical methods: oxidation, reduction, double decomposition. Okay. And next one, electrical disintegration method. And third one is peptidization method. These are the three preparation methods. Afterwards, the purification methods. Three purification methods we discussed. One is dialysis, electrodialysis, and peptidization. Sorry, ultrafiltration. Now come to the properties of colloids. Colligative properties. Colligative properties are very low for colloidal solution than compared to true solution, because number of solid particles are less here. Tyndall effect, nothing but scattering of light by colloidal particles. Color depends on two factors. One is nature of receiving the light and size of colloidal particles. And Brownian moment, this is a zigzag random momentum of colloidal particles in a colloidal solution. And fifth one is charge. The colloidal particles may be positively or negatively charged, which depends on which can be explained based on these three factors. Among these, the most preferred one is preferential adsorption of ions from solutions. Now, how particles acquires charge based on this preferential adsorption, in the next class we'll discuss. Okay.